Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network. Our show today is The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the listening mentor. And in case you're wondering, what is this all about? This is a brand new book, the first in a series of 7. I am co-writing with Mariska Duprier, my friend, who is over in New Zealand and probably fast asleep right now. And this show is all about promoting the wonderful animal characters who are on this book cover and also in the book. These characters represent real people who are committed to helping children and their families learn how to listen at an elevated level. Today we have a very special treat because we have one of those people here. He is the red ibis, the bird there in the middle of the background in front of the fence, and his name is also Red. Let's welcome to the show Red O'Loughlin. Hi, Red.
Hi there, Dr. Jacalyn. Good to see you again. It just seemed like we were just a day or so ago. We spent some time together, so it's always nice to be with you on these shows.
Well, thank you. It's good to see you as well. And I didn't get to say to our audience, whether they're watching or listening, that you have a very big role on this book as well. Aside from being a star in the book, you're also helping us with book coaching and publishing. So thank you for bringing that full circle.
Well, I think after your first 2, I don't know how much more help you really need. You're becoming the master. All of a sudden you went from 2 #1 best-selling books on Amazon to, okay, I'm going to do a children's book. Oh, I'm going to do 7 children's books. And then I'm going to do something else. And all of a sudden it's like you are infected with something and it's just going crazy, but you're delivering. I mean, the book is done. We have some illustrations that need to be tweaked out a little bit, but the basic writing is done. And I think between you and Mariska, you did a very good job of honing in on why is it important for kids to learn how to listen? Why not let them do just like their parents did and all their friends are doing? Why is it important for kids to be an elevated listener?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think what it comes down to, Red, is, as you know, from being an elevated listener and taking the power of listening, we get to be a certain age in our life, and all of a sudden we have all these bad habits that we have to undo. And so what if we learn from the very beginning how to listen without judgment, without interruption, without providing a solution, and without stealing the stage from someone else? What would that be like in terms of having some peace? You know, when you're just constantly going like this with someone because you want to have the last word, you want to be in control of the situation, and it never works out, does it?
But you're taking all the fun out of my life when I can't interrupt, when I can't tell them what I want to know right now. I mean, that's just the way it is. And whoever is louder, stronger, bigger is going to get that last voice. And therefore, whatever I said went. In reality, the other person, okay, fine, whatever. And they're going off, and there's no acknowledgement that, yeah, I heard what you said, but I didn't pay attention to it. And so I think from a child's perspective, and it's very important in many aspects, because they're growing, and whether they're learning from their school, their church, their family, relatives, trips. I mean, there's just so many things that kids have the ability to absorb, and they do it so quickly. It's amazing. When I had our 2 kids, we didn't know much about being parents at the time. Yeah, I'm the oldest of 9 kids, so I have a little bit of better understanding, but a lot of people, we just didn't. And so you kind of learn, you make mistakes over and over again. However, when we had our grandkids and I put them in the back seat of the car, they had to be strapped in because that was what the law said. And so we would start playing these games. Okay, what's 1 + 1? Okay, fine. Okay, what's 13 plus 37? Okay, and we'd go back and forth, and that went pretty well because they couldn't write anything down. They had to do everything from memory. And so as you start going through these things, and okay, give me a girl's name that starts with C. And we just go around the car, my wife and myself and the two in the back seat. And we noticed that as they got pretty good, you have to make it a little bit harder. Okay, what's 3 minus 5? Okay, that's a new concept. Have never thought of what happens on the other side of 0. And so we talked about that. And the ironic part was that by the time they got to testing, national testing at the garden level, they were 99 percentile in math and 99 percentile in English for both of them. And they've never ever had a fear of numbers. I mean, just throw a number at them, whatever it is. I said, okay, what are all the, add the numbers from 1 to 10. Well, you can sit there, 1 plus 2 plus. But if I said, Dr. Jacalyn, I'm going to give you 60 seconds, and I want you to add up all the numbers from 1 to 100 in order. Just give me the answer when you have it. I'm sure you can do that in 60 seconds, right?
I wasn't trying. I'm producing the show, but I'm sure I could, right?
Okay. But the thing is, if you look at it, what is 100 plus 0? It's 100. What's 99 plus 1? It's 100. What's 98 plus 2? It's 100. So you get all the way up and you have, how many hundreds do you have? Well, you went from 0 with 100 all the way up to 50, because at that point in time you had 49 and 51. So you had 50 hundreds, that's 5,000, and an extra 50, so it's 5,050. And so if you look at breaking things down, no matter what you're doing, there's certain ways. My grandson would solve problems in class, and he would tell his teacher, well, that it's much easier for me to visualize it this way. And he would actually show the teacher how he got the answer. And she says, yes, you're right, but that's not the way we're teaching it. And she's, well, as long as the getter's right, that's what counts. But it's a mindset. And if we can get into the minds and give them those little tools, those things that can help, whether it's just a hint, how long can you keep your mouth shut and feel comfortable when you're speaking? Well, in Toastmasters, about 3 seconds seems to be a very, very, very long time. You're standing up there and you think that you need to be saying something. And so the first thing comes out of our mouth is, we don't even know we're saying it unless somebody's ringing a bell. And then all of a sudden there's, okay, I'm saying something, what's going on? And so we have these things, and at the earlier we can get that into the brains, whether it's names, speaking language, numbers, listening, speaking, there's all sorts of things. And that's just ripe territory for us to be able to improve the quality of life for that person. And I think that's a very, very big deal. I mean, I think it's monumental. And the question that I have for you now is, okay, you chose a children's book, but you chose certain animals, or you chose a farm setting, but is that something that you felt like they would accommodate too easily or easily understand because there's other children's books out there with animals? Or was there some other background reason why you wanted specific things? I mean, let's get into what's going on in Dr. Jacalyn's head as to why this thing's going to work.
Well, as you know, I've never written a children's book before. And just in doing some research as to what resonates with kids, they typically like animals, or they're intrigued with animals. And so I actually put it out to all of our elevated listeners at the time. We have many more than we had back then. Would you like to have an animal character represent you in a book for children? And sent out a survey, and people responded to the survey, and then each person, like yourself, picked their own animal and named their own animal. So it just seems like a creative way to get children engaged. And I think the illustrations are going to have a big impact, but it's also what takes place in the book. And of course, you know the story of the book. Everybody else out here doesn't know. But just in the visual on the cover.
The sky is falling. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong book.
No, not this book. But you can see on the cover that there actually is a fence. And then on one side of the fence, there's a farm called Gentle Farm, and there's a cow. And then you see other animals on the other side, and you see an owl up in the tree. And in the middle, you see the ladybug. And that ladybug is me. I'm the elevated listener, the listening mentor. And of course, on our platform here, I am the chief listening officer and the listening mentor. I teach people how to listen at an elevated level. And that ladybug, Lady Ella, actually represents my great niece, Ella, who just turned 1. So it's kind of all came together. And we're already on to the second book, which this just happened yesterday. I met with Mariska and Madeline Chan, and we actually have a poem that is being turned into a song in the second book. So there'll be some sheet music in the back, and we're also going to record this song, professionally record it, and have it to be something where children and adults can sing this song about listening.
I don't understand, and maybe you can help me, why the illustrator couldn't put blonde hair on the ladybug.
I didn't give that instruction. I just said for the ladybug to have a necklace and have long eyelashes and gold wings.
Could have had golden hair too.
I know
Anyway,
I could have had that, but no. So that's the premise of the book is you have animals on one side and animals on the other side, and they're judging each other. Something happens in the book, and instead of communicating and discussing what each thought it could be, they made their own decision and felt like whatever they thought happened was the only answer. And that's what we do in life. And to your point, when you were talking about with your grandchildren, some of the exercises that you do with them, I feel like as we're on our listening journey, when we're not aware of the bad behaviors that we have, we revert to become children. You've seen this countless times where people just start slamming their fists and jumping. Why won't you listen to me? Listen to me right now. And then we start talking to people in another way, like, okay, let me explain it to you again, Red. Maybe you'll get it this time. Right? We start talking in a slower, derogatory tone. So, to me, if we can teach children how to avoid doing all of these things at their age, then they're going to be much better listeners, and their relationships will probably be more meaningful, and they'll be able to be listening more than they're speaking.
but you know something, Dr. Jacalyn, the fact that we have preconceived ideas, and whether they're cultural, spiritual, political, it doesn't matter. I've equated this thing, if you're sitting at the edge of a card table and I'm sitting at the edge of the other side of the card table, and in the middle of the card table, I'm looking at, and there's a big number 6, and you're looking at it as a big number 9. We're both looking at the exact same thing, but we see two different things. That's seeing, not necessarily listening, but the same thing happens. We hear things, and automatically our interpretation of words or phrases automatically go to a particular area. We've seen something like that recently with, I'm trying to think of it. There's, I think, a girl in a dress, and somebody says the dress is brown. Somebody says, no, it's purple or silver or whatever. Anyway, they're looking at it visually. The same people look, or they hear something, was that this or this? And so even though we see and hear the exact same thing, something inside our brains interpret it slightly differently. But the thing that we're putting out in this book, and this is really crucial to the success of learning, is the fact that we need to be aware that the minute you jump in and interrupt, it's disrespectful, it's rude, but you're not allowing that other person to completely, you've already taken the first part of that statement, whatever that person, and already formulated something in your brain. And at the same time, you formulated an answer that you can't wait to get out. I know I've been very bad about that. It's one of those things that, okay, come on, I need to, let me tell you what the real answer is here. And so I think from the perspective of the book, when you get the 7 of these things out and we're looking at each aspect of how do we really and truly improve our listening, I think that the audience, the children, the parents are going to see that brought to fruition, because I think the examples that you're using throughout the book do resonate with a 6-year-old, a 16-year-old, or a 60-year-old. It doesn't matter. We're just, I'm going to use the term dumbing down, but not necessarily. We're actually taking the language and making it easier to understand so that first graders, second graders, third can actually understand that, and that parents can have an easier time, with their pre-kindergarten kids and explaining what's going on. Your
Good
comment, your
points.
thought?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I wanted to add to that. We see this when people are training their dogs, for example. There's a lot of don't do this and don't do that. And I told you to shut up. And the same thing with children, go to your room, stop talking. But they have something to say. And if we were to listen, even with animals, they're trying to communicate something that's going on. And of course, we don't speak dog language, at least I don't. But they're trying to share something. Even a baby, for example, a baby on a plane starts screaming because the baby's in a state of distress. They're trying to communicate something. And as people, we're trying to share how we feel, but nobody wants to listen. And so what happens is I come to you, Red, and I want to tell you how I'm feeling, and you're busy and something's going on. So by the time I get to the fourth, fifth, sixth person, now I have such low self-esteem because no one's giving me that safe space. And I'm also angry. So now I just totally unload on you. And then you take that and you unload on someone else, and it just goes on and on. And I feel like that's what's going on in this world. What are your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right. We don't have the patience because we never learned patience when we're little. If we were taught, okay, let Johnny finish his sentence, and then you can say what you want, and Johnny's going to hold off. So we have that mutual respect for whatever's being said, and we're going to listen to the whole thing. Okay, fine. That's I hear what you're saying, and I can repeat it back if you want. That's a big deal. You ask somebody, can you paraphrase what I just said? And most of the time they can't because they've already digested what they want. But the word that I was trying to think of earlier was Laurel and Yanni. I don't know if you remember that or not, but there's a audio recording, and I'll hear Laurel, and my wife is standing right next to me, listening to the exact same thing at the same time, and she hears Yanni, and the same thing. It's just we even though the words are there, they're spoken plainly, we still have a chance to interrupt. But if I'm saying, let me repeat back to you, Dr. Jacalyn, what I think you just said, because I have some wrong. And if I repeat back and it's wrong, now I have a chance to understand better, more clarity. And I think that's sort of what we're trying to get at. You have to, it's incremental. You have to start here, then we go, then we graduate again. We add a little bit better skill and technique as we learn these listening. I'm going to call them habits because they should become habits down the road. And I know during COVID, I know it's the first time I got back out into the speaking realm, in-person meetings. I felt uncomfortable the first two or three times because I had not been doing it for a couple of years. And I'm sure with the listening, you take the class, you learn how to do that. You see the little examples, you participate. But if we're not using them on a regular basis, in other words, somebody comes home from work, like most of the guys, they're problem solvers. They come home, the wife is there, they have a problem. All they want to do is vent. They don't want the problem solved. So there's some psychological things in there too. Sometimes it's not that they don't want the problem solved. They don't want you to solve the problem right now. They just want to get their perspective off so they can, okay, fine. Now I've shared whatever. And so there's just a lot of things in life that we never even get involved with. So I have to applaud you for saying, I'm lying on sand right here. I want to improve people's listening ability. And let's start with the first graders and move our way on up.
Thank you, Red. I appreciate that. I think it's also, I know I was guilty of this when I was in my corporate career. We would have the Monday meetings, with the team, and I felt like I wasn't heard. So while Bob was speaking, I was thinking, okay, when Bob stops talking, I'm going to interject this example. And meanwhile, it wasn't even relevant because Bob was now talking about something else. So my example didn't even align with what Bob was saying, for example. But we're so desperate for attention in so many ways, meaning that nobody's listening to anything we have to say. So how do we get our attention? Do we jump up and down and make a scene? Do we start demanding that you listen to me? I demand you listen to me. How's that working? So we try these various techniques and they literally, not to use this pun, but fall on deaf ears. So what we're doing here on this platform, even with our interview shows, Red, we don't use a script. And there's so many times people will reach out and they'll write, hey, can you send me the questions in advance? No, there are no questions in advance, because if I'm focused on questions, I cannot be focused on listening. And this is apparent in our career, especially as a salesperson. You go to the meeting with certain questions and the executive is already talking about something else and you're focused on your list. Okay, we didn't get to number 2. What's he talking about? Because I'm not paying attention. And this is what happens. And then you don't create the relationship because the person doesn't feel like they've been heard. And then you don't get the business. And that's how life is. It's all these interchanges between us where people feel dissatisfied and unheard.
And listening sometimes is just a matter of sometimes taking very good notes, because if you have to translate from what somebody's saying right now to that note, I remember working for a large oil field service company, and we would start about once a quarter. We would start in one section of the world, and in about 12 hours, we'd work our way all the way around the entire world and get back to almost to where we started. But you had people because of their time of day. But you had to keep a record of what people said, because we're leaving this part of the world and we're going to this part. We're leaving, and there was literally maybe 5 minutes to disconnect with that and connect with the next one. And part of being able to, what really did they say? Well, okay, are you write it down? I need more clarity here. Okay, so I put a couple of question marks. I need to go back via email and get something out of them, or I need to call them, whatever it may happen to be. But when you're in that mode of trying to be a professional listener, because you have to account for what's going on, it puts a different perspective on us. But if we're just sitting in a room of another 10 people and it's the same old Monday morning meeting, they're here every Monday. It's nothing new. I mean, we develop that habit of being, let's say, less than professional. And okay, I hang on a second. I got, it's just too many distractions, too many things that were not, what is really important. And if really important is number 5 and number 9, why aren't they number 1 and number 2? When everybody comes in, the 2 things that have to be done, and so there's a lot of different things that we can do. But on the listening end of things, what's the first thing we need to do on listening? Don't interrupt. There's a lot of things we can do to improve listening, but if we just stopped interrupting people and listen, okay, are you done? Okay. Now I can talk. You said this, I disagree. You said this, I agree with you totally. You have the ability to let them know what you know, agree with, disagree with, but they understand why I disagree because of this. Well, that's fine. That's your perspective. It's a 6. That's what a 6 looks like. No, it's really a 9. It's, but if I go around the other side of the table and I'm looking at through your eyes, I can see how you see a 9 out of that. That makes sense, but it's still a 6 to me. And
yeah. No, I agree. I'm going to challenge what you said just in a little bit, just to get us to think about something. I feel like when someone is speaking, someone has something to share, I don't necessarily have to take time away from them to share how I feel. So, for example, if I'm meeting with you and you want to tell me something, and maybe I agree, I disagree, maybe it brings up memories for me about something, I don't have to share those things at that time because I'm giving you this time. I'm honoring you. And you could say to me after you're sharing about 6 or 9, how do you feel about this? What do you see when you look at it? Then you're inviting me into the conversation. But I feel part of where we get really off track is that we feel like, okay, I let you say let you say what you wanted to say. And now I'm going to say what I have to say. And we're still getting, it's like boxing. We're still getting back and forth, and we're not making that person special. We're not giving them that time.
And you're absolutely right, because the first one is don't interrupt, but you can't stop there. There has to be another step that you're taking in order to improve that overall listening. You say, well, what about we start over here with this? But no, let's go ahead. Because if we're constantly interrupting, we're not listening to anything.
So true.
But maybe
So
the next
true.
one, we don't preform a judgment on what we're hearing as step number 2, just to pick something out that I know is in your course material. So if I say, shut up and listen, okay, and don't preform a judgment, now I've taken 2 steps. And okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. I still disagree, but I'm hearing what you're saying. I can tell you what you said, and I can tell you why I disagree. But most of the time, we disagree. People don't know why we disagree, or they're not. She's not worth. I'm not going to even tell her why. Just let it go. And so there's a lot of different actions we can take. So depending on whether you're invited into the conversation, as you just mentioned a minute ago, or it's your turn to be the person talking about whatever it is at that moment. Uh, we have to start someplace. And I think starting with animals, and animals were basically in this book, they're talking to each other. And then at some point in time, we have more than one talking at a time. And that's the same thing as interrupting, because it's okay, I can hear you, but I can't understand more than 2 people at one time. My daughter was trying to listen to something on the way home today, and so she's having 2 conversations, one with us over the phone, one with somebody else over her police radio. And so she's trying to get 2 things at the same time and drive and do whatever else. And so you have to be able to concentrate. And so as you go through these things, yeah, this is the first step. This is what we're going to get better. And we're going to show people how they, even adults, especially adults, because they've already broken all the habits. They need to break the habits, I guess is what I said. They already have the habits, they need to break them, but they don't even know what they are.
Very true. And something else I want to add for you to think about. I am a full-time listener. This is what I do. I do this every day, all day. In the meantime, I have a lot of things that I'd like to share, but I don't really share them with anyone because I'm spending all my time giving and listening. So as a result, I don't need someone to listen to me because I listen to my intuition. I don't need to be right. I don't need to have people know where I stand on this, that, or the other, because I know where I stand, and I'm not in an arm wrestling situation with anyone. And there's a certain level of peace that comes with that. And I feel like if each and every one of us listened to their intuition and had more confidence in how we feel, we wouldn't need to be validated by somebody else standing up for our position or not. Does that make sense, Red?
Absolutely. Makes all the sense in the world. And just because I'm talking to you right now, it doesn't mean I have to do a core dump of everything that I know or want you to know right now. I mean, I had a college professor, I think it was international finance, and he was always saying, I don't want a core dump. Just give me the facts. And I think the first time I almost did a core dump, and I got a little core dump, 3 question marks, and 3 exclamation marks. I still got a good grade on it, but it was his way of telling me too much information. And so I think that's part of our relationship. What do you need to know, or what do I need to know right now for whatever this conversation is doing? But I don't need to know what you're going to be doing later on tonight, tomorrow, what you had for breakfast. There's a lot of things out there, or what Sally said to Timothy. I don't care. But some people feel like they have to share that information because that's just part of who they are. And again, as we become better listeners, we also become better speakers, because now we can. I think one of the best things I ever learned about Toastmasters was I could take a 5-minute topic and cram it into 15 minutes easily. No problem at all. But to take a 15-minute topic, organize it, memorize it, and put it down into 5 minutes, very organized, that's something that Toastmasters taught me how to do. You want to organize and be able to spit that back out, but you want to be able to spit it back out effectively. So if we're spitting out effectively, we ought to be able to listen with effectiveness. And if I organize my presentations and give them at the right level where I'm not using, well, let's say, phosphatidylserine, that's one of my favorite words. So if I'm not using words that are just outside the bound of people knowing, then I should be able to make myself clear easily in a fewer words and in a shorter amount of time.
Yes, good points. I agree with you. Recently, I was having a conversation with someone who was interested in coming on our platform, and the person shared with me that they weren't sure if they would be a good co-host because they didn't know if they could come up with enough questions. And I said, okay, let's take a step back because this is how life is as well. We don't need to come up with questions. We just need to listen. While you're speaking, I am fully present. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not thinking, when Red stops talking, what am I going to ask him? What am I going to say? I'm just following the flow of conversation. But we do this. We get ourselves caught up in, I feel stupid. I can't go to that meeting, or I can't speak to those people, or I can't reach out to help someone because what am I going to say? I don't know what to say. But just show up and be authentic, listen, and then be a human being and show compassion, show empathy, and give people a safe space to share. We all know when we've been with someone who wasn't listening to us, right? Can you think of, we don't want any names, but you know if someone's listening to you or they're not, don't you?
I think most of us know that intuitively, in some cases very obviously. But yes, I think there's many people that are not listening and they're very direct about it. So there's no doubt in anybody's mind. They know they've already shut you out.
Yeah, how do you feel about that when somebody shuts you out? Do you think I can't wait to see them again?
Well, I guess the question is, are they a friend? Are they acquaintance? Are they my boss? Are they, somebody, what hierarchical position do they have? Are they my wife, my kids, my parents? At what point in time, where do they fit on the hierarchical scale that I should have some respect to my pastor maybe, or to my college professor or whatever? There's a certain level of credibility that goes with some people, and you have to defer to them at some point in time. Whereas if I'm talking to an admiral and I'm out, doing whatever, you know, I have to react accordingly. But if I'm talking with somebody that's a much lower rank, then maybe the discourse is going to be a little bit different. The respect level that I'm going to give up is going to be a little bit different than the respect level I give down. It's like in some languages, they use different words when speaking to different age groups. There was in the I learned over in Korea. If I'm just going to meet somebody and they're my peers, and "안녕하세요," just how are you? But if I'm talking to somebody who's an elderly or a well-respected person, it'll be "안녕하십니까." So it's a slightly different, but it's more honorific because you're giving deference to that person. So if that person has the credibility, has the deference and the respect, then you owe your own body language and everything to reflect that back, because that there's something there. And it's just, we don't always know everything right now. There's too many times when, what he said really does make sense now that I have a chance to think about it. And we don't think about it right away. And so I think that in your particular case here, whether it be an ibis, a cow, a black panther, a horse, it doesn't matter. We're saying these are different people. They come from different backgrounds. They speak different culturally. Unless you're Amina, then she speaks to all of them, and that's not a problem. But I have a great idea for Amina, by the way. I'll share with you right after the show is over. Get your thought on it, because I think it'd be a great idea. But with the animals, you have a monkey or a gorilla or whatever, and even within the monkey gorilla kingdom, they don't always speak the same. So it's a difficult challenge on a good day, and when people are stressed out and there's too many other things going on, it's almost an impossible challenge to win.
Because we get in our own way. And I think regardless of a person's rank or what language we speak, we can still show respect by listening. And we could read body language. If I'm like this, you're going to take something from that. If I'm like this, you're going to take something from it, right? You're going to see, wow, she's acting defensive. She's rolling her eyes. She's not showing me the respect. That's in any language. So I feel like we have to start with ourselves. What are we doing to be accountable for our listening skills? And as you know, on this platform, Red, I am just adamant about people not interrupting each other. And I think another thing is, when someone's given so many interviews, sometimes they can become jaded, meaning, and that's not a judgment thing, meaning they know how to answer, they know to keep it short, but yet the emotion isn't there anymore. The joy or whatever it was that they felt at the time, they're not feeling it. They're just sort of putting on a suit, showing up at the desk and answering the question. So we're not encouraging that. And even for the animal characters in the book, you never want to have a set of rules that gets in the way of a person's inner feelings about themselves. So, for example, you're the red ibis, and we'd love to find out why you chose the red ibis and why you named it red. So, we'll get right to that. But you're still entitled to be red. And being able to listen to Abu the panther, for example, doesn't mean that you're no longer red. It just means you're red in a listening mode. You're red showing respect to Abu. And in this book, for example, you could be intimidated by Abu. Abu's a panther, you're a bird, right? So you could have your own fear factor about being close to a panther. But yet at the same time, you can still show up and show respect to the panther. And that panther might treat you very differently as opposed to you squawking your feathers and making a scene and causing chaos. Then the panther might be intimidated and that would get a different reaction.
Yes, and I believe that you're right, because intimidation is a big factor in listening, probably even more so than we even want to recognize. When we're intimidated by somebody, I think we become defensive, whether we have a right to be or not. Okay, fine, that person has a right to say that, but the uncomfortableness there sometimes. You can have credibility and passion and still have a topic that nobody wants to hear. But if you're doing the same podcast, TV interview, radio interview, whatever it may happen to be, presentation, day in, day out, and you're really passionate about something, you can do it 100 times and not lose that passion. You have other people sometimes like, okay, Red, what time is it? And I say, okay, it's 3:15. Or I can build you a watch and you get lost in all the minutia. And that's part of us being able to not only recognize what it takes to be a good listener, it's also what does it take in order to make somebody else a good listener. And those are short, concise, well understood choices of words with enough time to digest them. I speak rapidly for many people. I usually tell them, well, they just listen slowly. Regardless, I know I speak quickly, and I sometimes have to go back and, okay, one, two, and rehash things just to make sure that they're aware of what I'm saying. And usually one of the marks of a good Toastmaster is the fact that, here are the 3 topics I'm going to talk about today. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and in wrapping everything up, we talked about this and this and this. And so you go back over it one more time. In speaking to somebody else, maybe that's what we need to be looking at as a part focus, is the fact that, well, this is what I heard you say. And I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. And then you reiterate it back to them. Your thought?
Yes, I think everything you said makes a lot of sense. I agree. I also think that, and I have gone through this not only in the course, but also on my Talking Head series, is there's something called setting boundaries and asking for permission. So when you are aware of your limitations or your bad habits and you're working on them, it's a really good tool to set a boundary. So you cannot be listening at an elevated level all the time. It's not possible. So if I come to you and I tell you I have something to share, would this be a good time? You, as the elevated listener, have every right to say, I hear, I see you, I hear you, I acknowledge you. This is not a good time. Thank you for asking. And the reason it's not a good time is another show of respect, because I want to have my undivided attention for you. And right now I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I cannot focus on what you're saying. But sometimes we're so worked up, we're so emotional and agitated, we don't even care if you're available to listen. I could be talking to the back of your head. We do this in our personal lives all the time. We just walk up behind someone, blah, 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 blah. They're doing something else. They can't, and they were like, are you listening to me? No, I'm not listening to you, right? These are just things that we can become very much aware of. And I feel like when we know the listening skills and we practice them, there is a complete level of emotional control, that we're not so desperate and needy for somebody to give us their attention at that very second.
I think that was well summarized. Yes.
Thank you. I didn't do the 1, 2, 3, but
No, but you follow the process of 1, 2, 3, even though you didn't say it, but it was very obvious in what you were doing in summarizing that, which
thank
speaks
you.
of almost toward the end of our show here.
Yes, perfect, Tommy. Tell us why you chose the red ibis.
Red's always been an interesting color for me. 8 out of 11 in my family are redhead. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, 6 boys and 3 girls. And red was one of those ones that was a thing back then. I'd rather be dead than red on the head. I heard so many times as a kid. The Redskins, the Indians, Cowboys and Indians was big back in my early childhood, and so red became it was my nickname in my family. We had Daddy Red, we had Big Red, we had Red, we had Little Red. My son was born. Well, he was Baby Red. Well, for everybody called him Baby Red until he got up to be almost a teenager, and they're still calling him Baby Red. And he's, hey, don't call me baby anymore. Red is what it is. But red is something that I like the color. I like the name. It's short and concise. And when you start looking at the animal kingdom, there's not a whole lot of truly red animals out there. You have a lot of white, black, brown, in between shades of all sorts of things. But if you're looking for a silver animal, a gold animal, a transparent animal, there's very few. The same thing in the category of red. Yeah, there's flamingos, but they're more of an orange than a true red. And if I had to look for something that has red because of my name, then I chose the ibis because I think it's kind of a neat looking animal, and it really and truly does have some really scarlet red color in its feathers. And I know if somebody calls me and they said, "Is Francis there?" I said, "Okay, they're a bill collector or somebody. They have no idea who I am." So it's also an automatic filter when I get phone calls from people or mail or whatever, that if they're not calling me red, I know they don't know me. All they're doing is they have my name off of some official deal. So red to me is kind of a special case. The fact that I can use that as my moniker, and of course you can tell by my red hair that I wear it well also. And I wore this red shirt today because I needed to be red.
Thank you very much, Red. I've really enjoyed doing this show with you. So we're going to be signing off, and I just want to give people food for thought. How do you show up when you know you're going to be in a conversation with someone and it's going to be very uncomfortable? You already know they have a problem with you. How do you show up for the meeting? And we'll discuss that in a future episode of Talking Heads.
It's something that I would rather give a little thought to. It's happened to me many times, particularly in the Navy. You get some cross purpose of somebody. It's happened to me up in my church where we're trying to use the facility for the same time. And I mean, it's just, there's times there where I really don't want to talk to that person right now. And maybe that ought to be the lead in to our next one of you and me talking here, because I think that's a good question to leave it at. And we would encourage anybody who's watching, if they have an answer next time we show up, that's a good one to get some audience feedback on too, because it's difficult on a good day, but there are ways, I believe, of doing it. And again,
yes,
it's how professional are you, and how it's not the stress of what's happening. It's what you allow, what you hold on to and don't let go. And so if you're not holding on to their shenanigans, for lack of a better word, in the discussions, just let it go. Just let it go. You're not holding on to it, so it's not affecting you. It's not going to affect your language. It's not going to affect your body impressions, your facial expression. You're just going to be whoever you are. But the mere fact that you start taking a little bit of offense to it, all of a sudden you can tell things are not right. So it's a mental game first, and then you have to, okay, that's fine. I know that person doesn't mean it. It's just who they are, and you just let it go.
Exactly, because we all know situations where we were not in control of our emotions and it doesn't feel good. And
Yeah.
especially the later it gets, the longer it goes on, you start to think to yourself, oh, I just hate myself because I just totally lost control. And I just became an emotional wreck. And that doesn't help anyone. Now you have to look at yourself and say, okay, how can I work on that?
Yeah.
But we've run out of time, and our next show is coming up with actually the Panther, Abu. So that's the Mallorca connection. Red, how can people reach out to you, and who would you like to connect with you?
My contact information is on my website, redolaflin.com. Red like the color, RED, Olaflin spelled OLAUGHLIN, redolaflin.com. I have my phone number there, my email addresses. So if you need to reach me, I'm available for speaking. I'm available to answer questions on writing and authoring, and I also publish books for people. So if any of those topics are of interest, please, send me an email, give me a call on the phone. I'll tell you right now, texting is not what I do well. I'll take a look at it, but it won't be in a timely manner. But you call me on the phone, I'll answer it, or I'll be able to respond quickly with one of the default. Already, I had somebody call me during this session. I had to say, I can't talk right now, and I push the button. It sends out an automatic text. But generally speaking, email is what I prefer. Phone calls are fine, and I'm more than happy to talk about any aspect of writing, authoring, speaking, or publishing.
Brilliant. Thank you again, Red, for being here. I appreciate it. Red and I are going to sign off right now, and we'll be coming back momentarily. I'll be back with Mr. Roland Friedel, who is in his motorhome somewhere in Europe. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.